You know, in the scripture, first of all, thank you for joining the YouTube channel. We're going to show you something very unique and a little bit unusual, especially when excavations are made and you find something of this nature in a Jewish synagogue. And let's just show you this right from the beginning here. But this is a mosaic floor. You see the original ruins of what was a synagogue in the Galilee area. And the significance of what you're looking at is the mosaic floor. Mosaic floors were, of course, used in the Greek time, the Roman period, etc. And these synagogues were built somewhere between, I think it was, Yoshi said, the 4th century to the 8th century, if we add them up. So we're looking at a time frame here. So this would be probably, let's say 5th century, somewhere in that neighborhood. If you look in the center, you see what is called the Zodiac, or the wheel of the Zodiac. Now, where the controversy comes in with this being in a Jewish synagogue would be based on what we call the Torah, which are the 5 books of Moses, about making an image and worshiping the image. Of course, if this is in a floor, it's not being worshiped. It is the image of the 12 constellations. Each of the constellations has a symbol. But instead of us talking about why they put this here and the purpose for it, I'm going to explain something to you that a lot of people are not familiar with. All of the sons of Jacob, there were 12 original sons of Jacob, and as you know, Joseph in Egypt became Ephraim and Manasseh. So in other words, instead of the Bible talking about the tribe of Joseph, you would talk about Ephraim and you would talk about Manasseh. That's how we pronounce his name in English, Manasseh or Manasseh. And so these 2 sons that were born to Joseph in Egypt came in with the other tribes when the children of Israel left Egypt and came back into the promised land under the direction of Joshua. There recorded in the book of Joshua. And of course, they settled this land, and 2.5 tribes settled on the other side of the Jordan River, which Moses permitted them to do once the land was conquered. Now let's go back to the idea that if you look at, for example, the blessing that Moses gave in the Torah, and you also especially look at the blessing on the tribes that the patriarch Jacob gave before he died. Every tribe had a particular symbol. One of them, he talks about the ships. Another one which is very familiar with you, Judah, the tribe of Judah, he talks about being a lion's whelp. Therefore, the lion became an emblem of the tribe of Judah. And of course, in this wheel that is in the synagogue, representing the 12 constellations of heaven, there will be a lion. It's very hard to see. In fact, you really couldn't tell it was much of a lion the way it was made, but he's up there in the corner at the top. Now, this is the reason I want to share this with you. I want to go back to a dream that Joseph had when he was a young man. Joseph dreamed that there were 11 stars that bowed before his star. And if you remember the entire dream, he dreamed there was the sun and he dreamed that there was the moon. But he said to his father, he said, I saw the 11 stars bow down before my star. And when you talk about the stars, there are billions of stars in the heaven. And even back in that day, had they been looking up in the heaven, there were millions of stars. What he was speaking of there was the constellation. You know how you got the earth and you got the sun, and how 365.25 days a year that you have that movement taking place in the heavens. And so the Jewish people, and we can see this on signs outside that describe this synagogue, would take every emblem and it represented one of the Jewish months. Each emblem, in other words, you have like Nisan, you have the month of Adar, you have different month Tishrei. Each one of the emblems represented one of those months of the year. But let's go back to the story of Joseph, because this is very intriguing. Most people have never heard this taught. When Joseph was saying that the 11 constellations bowed before his, Joseph had an emblem of the heavens, because these constellations were known way back in ancient times. Some suggest that the mystery of the heavens was revealed to Adam's son Seth, and others suggest that Enoch was revealed the secrets of heaven. And that's another teaching for another time. So those constellations in the heavens were all given symbols, they were all given names. But apparently in the earliest days, God gave Jacob 12 sons, and each of those 12 would represent a month on the calendar, and each of those 12 would represent a symbol that would later be a symbol known in the heavens. Of course, with the Egyptian teachings and the Babylonians and the Greeks, so many things came along, and a lot of that would have been twisted, or we would call it perverted over the years. But my point is that when Joseph saw the 11 constellations, it wasn't just stars, it was the constellations that represented his brothers, and he being the 12th constellation, because there were 12 sons, as you were told earlier, and we read in the scripture. Here's what's important. When the sons of Jacob came to Egypt, they did not know who Joseph was at first because he concealed himself from his brothers. But as long as there were 10 brothers there, he never revealed himself to them. When they brought Benjamin, who was the youngest, if you remember, he said, "Do you have another brother?" "Well, we have a brother, but if we bring him down, we don't know what's going to happen to our father." He said, "Well, I want you to bring all your family in." When the 11 were all together, that's when Joseph hid himself and began to weep. And that's when he revealed himself to his brothers, because all of his brothers were there. And when you have the Pharaoh walking in, or you have the second in command, what would they do? They would bow down and pay homage to him. And he saw that day, many years later, the fulfillment of the dream of those 11 brothers. Benjamin was now there in the Genesis story, bowing down before him, and he knew that was the fulfillment of a dream that he'd had many, many, many years ago. So I just wanted to share this teaching with you because there's so much more that we could share about the symbolism and so on and so forth. But we have to understand that the Bible tells us in the book of Genesis that God created the sun and the moon for signs and for seasons. And so we know that the moon determines the monthly cycle, and the sun determines the yearly cycle. And of course, the constellations have signs and emblems of their own. And the Bible even mentions Arcturus, it mentions Orion, it mentions the Pleiades in the book of Job. So these are mentioned in the scripture as well. And there's been a lot of teaching over the years, and sometimes people have shut off teaching like I'm sharing with you now because they don't understand it. But it is some things that are very interesting, and I think there's a balance to this type of teaching, because you're not to worship the sun, you're not to worship the moon, you're not to worship the stars, that's forbidden in scripture, and you're not to make an image that you bow down and worship before, which becomes an idol. And so that's where the fullness of the actual teaching comes in God's revelation that he gave to Moses. So it's a beautiful synagogue, by the way. There's not much left of it, but this floor is totally intact. It is absolutely incredible how it's, I'm not sure how much they've had to repair. You can see some damage on the edges there, but all of this has different types of symbol we don't have time to get into, but you can see, I do know that Yoshi was showing me on a sign out there, that in the middle section, you see 4 women that represent the spring and the summer and the winter and the fall. There's the harvest season represented there. So all of this has a story in it. So, and then down here at the bottom.
Sacrifice of Jacob.
Oh, that's the sacrifice of Jacob. Okay.
Not Jacob, sorry. Sacrifice of Isaac.
Oh, sacrifice of Isaac. There we go. Sacrificing Isaac. Okay, I can see him over there. Look up there at the corner. You see the face? So all of this has really tremendous, really incredible symbolism in it if we had time to teach it. So this is, again, one of these little side things that we do on our Holy Land tours. And we invite you to come with us. Yossi, come over here with me for just a minute. This is our guide. Gideon Bashore was our guide for years, but Gideon's no longer able to guide. But Yossi is like Caleb. He is still strong as an ox and as smart as a tack, as they used to say. And I appreciate him. He is full of so much knowledge. And I love talking to him. We just sit on our bus and talk because we learn so much together. So if you ever come on a Holy Land trip, you can't get him on my trip because he's going to be on my trip. But if you ever come on a Holy Land trip, ask for Yossi. And is that okay? Is that a good flight?
Yeah, of course.
Because he's great. He's been with me how long? About 35 years probably now. I think about 35 years.
With you?
Yes. At least that long.
I can feel that.
Brother, I can feel it too. I was telling Pam the other day, I said, I walked for the first time up that hill at Nimrod's fortress, and I didn't stretch my calves before I did, and I can feel it today that I have not walked in a while. But I promise you, by the time I leave the hole, I'm going to be in shape. So thank you for joining me. Give us a thumbs up if you enjoy the teaching. Please do that. And you need to subscribe to the channel. It's a great help to us. If you do, keep watching. Something good's coming up. This is Perry Stone. I am so excited to be able to present to you and your family two of the most exciting audio teachings that I have done in many years. Will Jesus Return by 2033, and the special teaching, The Soon Closing Out of the Church Age. Now, I want to talk for a moment and tell you that I'm not predicting the return of Christ in 2033, but I am saying to you that it is the most pivotal transitional date that we have encountered in our lifetime and in modern history. And I'm going to show you why that 2033 is the most important prophetic date in the prophetic cycle. And we're going to talk about God's calendar and God's timing and the events surrounding where we are going in the distant future. I also want to present to you a very special teaching, the soon closing out of the church age. The church age is also known as the dispensation of the grace of God, and it will eventually come to a conclusion with Christ's return. Then the wrath of God is going to be globally released in what is called the Great Tribulation. Now, on this 2 audio CD series, you will discover details on how, why, and when this major prophetic transition will occur. Man, this is a very powerful message. It is filled with fascinating new insight, and it provides keys to understanding soon coming events. Now, you can now get both of these audio CD messages. There are 4 CDs, 4 hours of teaching for your love gift of $30 or more. We really need your help to keep Manifest on the air. The way that you order this special teaching is by going to perrystone.org and ordering online, or call 1-888-21-BREAD toll-free and order that way. Or you can also write me at Perry Stone, P.O. Box 3595, Cleveland, Tennessee 37320. Now, when you call or write, you have to request offer number PR-138, and it is the special brand new prophecy updates. We're hoping to hear from you, and we just pray that God will continue to bless you.
If you enjoyed this YouTube content, there's an important website you should know about: perrystone.org. Perrystone.org is an essential resource for the latest books, audiovisual presentations, and digital products from Perry Stone Ministries, resources that cover the same kinds of topics discussed in the program you just watched. Stop in and see all that's available at perrystone.org.